That's really important for the algorithm. And if for some reason you have not subscribed to the Clay Kane Show on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. And you can also join Clay Nation. You could actually join and get access to early content that I've been posting a lot recently. Get early access, get top chatting or whatever the case may be. I'm going to add some more perks there. But Clay Nation, join Clay Nation and make it happen and all that good stuff. All right, so I want to start here because I had an interview yesterday with a man named Jonathan Harrison. And if you are watching on YouTube, and if you're not watching, you could watch the interview. Not the entire interview is on the SiriusXM app, but a clip of the interview and a good amount of it is on my YouTube page, youtube.com/Clay Kane Show. So the interview is getting a lot of traction, lots and lots of comments, and I've been getting phone calls about the interview since yesterday. So I want to just say a little bit here. So this is, and I want to just say, I've gotten so much love for conducting this interview. So 90% of what I've gotten has been love. And it's a bit what Terrence Woodbury has spoken about. Compassionate curiosity. Actually, play this clip from Terrence Woodbury, who is an incredible strategist. He works at Hit Strategies, and he does polling. Now, I'm not big on polling, but he does do sit-down focus groups. And here's one of the things that he was saying about black voters specifically and how we have to handle and answer these questions. Listen to this.
I have to make this point every time I talk about these gaps, the gender and generation gaps in the black community. Voters are the consumers, right? Yeah. Candidates that are running for office are the product. You don't blame the consumer when they stop buying your product. You make a better product. We need to present candidates and policies that better appeal to the consumer and not blame the consumer for not buying. When I hear both of us have hurt each other, we have never hurt each other more than racism and a patriarchal society have hurt us. We have to engage these conversations with this compassionate curiosity, because when you start with judging how our voters feel, then it's too hard for us to get to the solution. One is the pain that brothers are feeling, right? When you said things haven't gotten better, it was a young man in the focus group, Angela, that said something very similar to you when he said, "My hood ain't getting no better under Obama."
All right, so that's important. I want to start there. I want to start with that. So with the man that I interviewed yesterday, he's a federal worker, and he was fired, reinstated, and now he's on administrative leave. So if you're a listener to the Clay Kane Show, you'll know that I've been wanting to interview federal workers, and I saw him in an ad for Maryland Governor Wes Moore. That's why I interviewed him. And so we reached out to Wes Moore's team and said, hey, could we have Mr. Harrison's contact information? Love to have him on the show to talk about his experience. So he agreed to come on, and while we were scheduling, he was reinstated. And so we still said, well, let's have him on to talk about the process, and, I want to talk to people who are personally impacted. Now, we have so many great callers who call into the show and tell their stories, but I wanted to have a sit-down interview with him. And, a lot of folks may not be aware, but I am a trained journalist. That's where I first started. Now, when I'm on these airwaves giving my opinion, I don't have the journalism hat on, but I can always put the hat on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And one of the key things that I'm proud of myself is I know how to interview people, right? Now, it's a different interviewing a politician or some random celebrity. And with a politician, you're going to walk in there with much more pointed, it could even be one might consider judgmental questions because they want power over your lives, right? So, but when you're doing a human interest story, and for anybody out there who wants to do journalism, if you're a younger person out there, keep this in mind. If you're doing a human interest story with somebody who is not in media, not like they're a reality star or they always give canned responses. This is a human interest story about a federal worker who was fired. and reinstated. You can't walk in there judging them. And even if you hear something that you don't agree with in the interview, you can't walk in there. You can't look like you're damning them to hell. In my doc for BET that I did, Holler, If You Hear Me Black and Gay in the Church, I sat down with a woman who would not go to her daughter's same-sex wedding. And she said that being gay is spiritual warfare. It's an abomination. She didn't agree with her daughter. Her daughter chose this. And folks were hitting me up like, how could you sit there and listen to that? Damn it, this is what I do. Like, this is, it's not about me, right? So I want to really make that clear. Because some folks were saying, oh, you should have dragged him. You should have dragged him. You should have went off on him. That's not, I know that we're in this drag him culture, drag everybody culture for a viral moment, but I wanted to hear him. And I wanted to have that compassionate curiosity. For folks who don't know, he said he didn't vote for Kamala Harris. He wrote his name in for president. Now, I didn't agree with that, but I pushed back on him. I pushed back on the policies. What didn't you like? The whole trans issue came up. I asked him, if you were fired from, do you think you would have been fired under a Kamala Harris administration? And some folks were saying, oh, well, that was uncomfortable to hear and blah, 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 blah. On this show, you're going to be uncomfortable sometimes. Yeah. You just are. And this is not a celebrity. This is not a politician. This is not, and he wasn't rude. He wasn't disrespectful. He didn't curse at me. He didn't say I had a Jerry curl like Omarosa did. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't being rude. Did I agree with him? No. But I pushed him and pushed him and pushed him. And I wasn't going to go off on him. I know you want the drag him. Yeah, I know you want drag. I wasn't going to do that to somebody, and this may annoy people to hear. I believe he wasn't MAGA. I believe he was still he could still be a gettable voter, because according to him, and some of y'all didn't believe him, fair enough, that's your decision to believe him or not. He voted before. This was the one time he didn't vote for president. Did it make sense to me? No. But this is another black man who I didn't agree with at all. Some folks said, oh, he was churchy, he was religious. I grew up with churchy and religious. You know? So I wanted to be able to have that dialogue and ask pointed questions. And I have interviewed everybody from survivors of the Jonestown Massacre to porn stars to celebrities like Beyonce to the Vice President of the United States. So if I'm going to be in interview mode in a human interest story, because there's a lot of people who judged the survivors of Jonestown. Why the hell would you go all the way across the globe and follow some crazy white man named Jim Jones? And he ends up like, why would you do that? But I wasn't going to go in the interview that way. You know, a way to do an interview is you have to make people feel comfortable enough to say how they feel. And if what they feel is wrong, they'll hang themselves. If you feel like it's wrong, rather they'll hang themselves. If you feel like it's right, then you'll agree. So I just wanted to say that because, again, the majority of stuff I got was love. But he did say he voted for Angela Brooks. So I think it's important to listen to him with that compassionate curiosity. I think it's important to listen. Did I agree? Hell no. If you look at my eyes in the interview, I'm like, really? Really? Is that, you really thought that? Okay. And I brought in, she's an HBCU grad. I mean, you know, would a trans person shut down the Department of Education? So, but y'all can comment and say what you want if you didn't like what he said, of course. But questioning, you know, oh, you went too soft on him. Not that. I've been doing this for 20 years. Okay? Allow me to reintroduce myself. You know, I know I wasn't going to attack him like that. And that's just not my style. I'm not trying to know nobody else, but I'm not trying to make him. I wanted to hear his perspective. And is there a way to get that voter back? And if we have elections again, if that happens, We need voters like him who always voted before. Did I think there was misogyny in there? I did. Did I think there was some deep conservatism in there? I did. But I have always said the most important voting bloc is the non-voter. And the majority of us, especially black voters, not always the majority, but too many of us, almost the majority, aren't voting at all. So how do we get to that person? So maybe he changed his mind. He admitted, he said, okay, I didn't do the follow-up. And I've also, y'all, I've had those conversations in the barbershop. I had no idea it was going to go that way, but this is live radio. This is live radio. So for all the it was hard to hear. You should have dragged them. Why didn't you go harder? And where was that? You want two black dudes to yell at each other and get mad and get heated on? No, that he wasn't the enemy. I know it may seem like he was. He did what I think is ridiculous, but we could still get a voter like that. That's why I said the outreach to barbershops and black communities, it must be consistent. So that was a bit of some folks have accused Urban View of being in a bubble. Obviously, we're not, because I brought this brother in and we had that conversation. So I just wanted to say that because people were trying to tell me what I should have done. And I'm proud of what I did. And maybe somebody else can watch that interview and be like, yo, I thought that way. And maybe I was wrong. And it is true. It is true that now you're impacted. You feel different. And that's how a lot of people are. A lot of people don't care until it impacts them. So that was a live radio moment that I didn't know was going to happen. And that's what you do. You go with it. So I just wanted to say that. And I appreciate, although he has no experience in media, I appreciate him sitting there and answering all of my questions and not get all defensive, you know? So that's what it is. And now if he would have got trifling and ugly and nasty, then we would have had to tussle. With Omarosa, she was getting nasty and nasty with me. She said I had a Jerry curl, said all types of stuff. You know, y'all have seen the famous Omarosa interview. So, you know, she was trying to take over the interview. Some of these black Republicans that I've had on, like Joe Pinion, for example, who was running for senator of New York, they get unhinged from the door. So he was, to Jonathan Harrison's credit, he was confident in what he did. And he wasn't a hit dog who was hollering. Did I agree with it? No. But maybe we can get someone like that next time or for a local election. So just wanted to say that for all the folks who felt like went too soft, went too this. It wasn't soft at all. It was me doing my job as a journalist. And that was me putting on my journalist hat and telling him he was stupid or attacking him or you're doing a bunch of contradictions, telling him what I think he's saying. No, just let him say it and ask the questions. So I just wanted to say that. So it's all love. You can not like it if you want to, but I just wanted, for the younger folks out there listening, if you want to be in journalism, when you're doing a human interest story, that person cannot feel like they are being judged. Then you're not going to get anything out of it. They're just going to shut down. A human interest story. I'm not talking about celebrities and politicians and ratchet reality stars. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. Now, but how I felt about what he was saying, bro, come on now. It hurt my heart. I even said it. I mean, it hurt my heart. How I felt about it? Nah, I didn't agree with it at all. But there are people who feel that way. But I didn't think he wasn't MAGA. I thought there could be a way to get him. And that gave me a little bit of hope. But go ahead, Teddy. What do you think, brother?
Well, I will say, I think that, you make some really, I think, important points about journalism and what journalism is supposed to be. And it is supposed to be objective. But we live in an era where if you look at any cable news, most of it's opinion. It's not really journalism.
And I can do that too. I do that as well.
All the Cronkites and all those people, like, it's gone really for the most part. So it's a lot of opinion shows. I listened to the interview. I watched the interview. I thought it was interesting. I did think that the questions you asked were important to ask to understand. And so, you are a journalist, I am not. And I don't have any like bandwidth for that bullshit to me.
Get it. Totally get it.
There's a point in time when we are talking, because the truth of the matter is this. He said some things that I thought were interesting. Like, I voted for Angela Alsobrooke, but his issues seemed to be with the vice president, Kamala Harris, was not with her candidacy or her policies or her agenda. It was the fact that he had an issue with the process of her becoming the nominee. And so I think that if you hang your hat on some principled position of, I'm not going to vote for the person who has the most power in the world to impact people all over the globe for generations, I think you are an anti-intellectual person. I'm just my nice way of saying you stupid as, because it doesn't make any sense. And for me, it's not, and moving with not even being pragmatic, just at a base level, it doesn't make sense. Like, the president is going to put policies in place. The president is going to put Supreme Court justices, maybe, or federal justices for sure. The president is going to sign executive orders. The president is going to push some agenda. The president is going to set the narrative, and that's going to happen. And I think what was most fascinating is, I don't know the man's background, but my assessment is that he sounds like a very intelligent person. He was articulate. He was clear about what he was saying and his thoughts. I just don't understand how he got where he is. I think to the point that what's the gentleman's name? Terry, the strategist.
Terrence Woodbury.
Terrence Woodbury, I think, makes a really great point that you connected to that. Having this kind of curiosity where we're talking to people and sorting out where they are. I personally am more interested in that conversation with non-voters, because that's where I feel like Democrats really need to focus.
He was basically a non-voter, though. He wrote in his name.
I'm saying, but he's a voter. He showed up and voted.
But he really didn't vote for the president. He didn't vote third party. See, this is why this was important to see.
He's not a non-voter. He showed up and made a choice at the poll, voted for Angela Alsobrooke, and then wrote his name in. Like, what?
He's somewhere in between. Nonetheless, he didn't vote for president of the United States. He didn't vote third party. He didn't vote Democrat. He didn't vote Republican. He more or less just left that blank, which may give us some answers on why Kamala Harris, other people down ballot won, and she didn't win.
Yeah,
I mean, there's something.
A lot of that. I think, again, we talked about this in November, in December, and January. A lot of it, I'm not saying this is true of this particular gentleman, but a lot of that, I think a lot of it was just racism and sexism, like, period. Now, some people had an issue with the process and all of that, and I get it. But what did they expect, people to do at that point, the Democrats to do at that point, right? Like, when Joe Biden finally says, I'm not running, it's too late for a primary. It would have been a disaster. But I did find it interesting that he said if Joe Biden had stayed on the ballot, he would have voted for him. And you and I talked about that.
You and I talked about that. Both you and I talked about that a lot.
I would still say, we don't know, but I still say I believe Joe Biden could have won that election. I really do believe. I mean, especially when we look at the numbers and the margins by which Kamala Harris lost. It wasn't like a blowout, right? Even though, she lost all the swing states, but she didn't lose them by much. And so the question is, if Biden had stayed on, would he have been able to maintain that margin of victory? And I think he would have been. But anyway, whatever. So I think that when we're talking about curiosity and how we engage, people who are not voting, or people who are voting third party, or people who are, I don't know, just voting for, Trump. It is an interesting conversation to have, but I think we have to really be honest about the why. I think in what's the man's name again?
Terrence Woodbury.
In Terrence Woodbury's, the clip you played, he talked about the product, right, and the consumer. Yeah, I think it's a great analogy. Consumer, yeah. But there's a really important nuance to that, to me, because if I am telling you, Clay Kane, if I am advertising that I have a new product that can help you lose weight in 6 weeks, right? I'm advertising this particular product. Now, you as a consumer have an opportunity to buy it. And you can say, well, I may buy it, I may not. But if somebody else is running a counter ad that says you can buy this product, but it's going to kill you in 6 days, now you're going to be looking at kind of what's happening. So I don't think it's intellectually.
But Teddy, to be fair, Kamala Harris's team never ran a counter ad to the trans issue. They didn't want to address it.
I'm saying if we look at Kamala Harris,
You're saying in general.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, but I'm saying look at Kamala
I'm
Harris.
not saying it's her fault, but they should have combated that because that was resonating, even though it was a lie. That was resonating.
But I'm saying exactly, and that's what I'm saying. When we talk about Kamala Harris as a candidate product, and you say, well, you can't be mad at the consumer. You got to look at the product and figure out what's happening on the product. Well, you have to also factor in that Trump was running millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in other ads that were setting a narrative about the product. So it's not as simple as like the product isn't good, we got to fix the product. Like we have to also.
May I ask a question though?
Yeah.
May I ask a question? That 40-year-old man who I interviewed, can we all concede that there are brothers like that in our community?
Oh yeah.
Who are very religious, who would never vote Republican,
Yep.
but because of one issue, they may talk themselves out of voting for the president.
Yep.
Like, I don't think we could throw him away. I think he's gettable if he wasn't impacted by misinformation and disinformation. I think he's a gettable voter. He was in a Westmore ad, a Governor Westmore ad, around federal workers being fired.
I don't know why this man's name won't stay in my head, but Terrence
Woodbury. Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's the thing. I think in his analogy, you have to also factor in the negative ads you're going to get about the candidate. So it's not as simple as just to say Democrats have bad candidates, need to pick better ones so the consumer will vote. We have to also talk about the misinformation and the disinformation that does impact good candidates. Kamala Harris is a good candidate. She's a smart candidate. Yeah. She's an accomplished candidate. So to me, the problem was not with the candidate. It wasn't with the product. It's with the narrative around it. I think you're right. They should have been more aggressive. They should have pushed back. They should have said, no, that's not actually true. To the point that you make, the gentleman you interviewed yesterday said, he believed the trans ad about
getting surgeries, but taxpayers are paying for those that are in prison. Yeah.
This is my frustration. So what?
There's that too.
True. So, because then now we're talking about the other component. This is one of the other things we must talk about in our communities. We must be very intentional about addressing soft bigotry, and we do not talk about it. We don't talk about it. You were on air with the gentleman, I can't think of his name. I liked him a lot. He's on earlier in the week with you. Dr. something with a T, maybe.
Dr. Omekongo?
No.
Binga?
No. He's another guy. He's on air with you periodically. Tillery?
Richard Fowler? Alan Orr? Victor Legrune? Amisha Cross? Reese Colbert? I don't know.
I can't think of his name, but I love when he's on with you. I don't think he's on every week, but you and he.
Oh, Dr. Alvin Tillery. Dr. Alvin Tillery. Yes. Yeah. From Northwestern. Yeah.
You said to him, he was talking about going to Ghana. And you said, well, yeah, great for Black people in general, but being gay is illegal in Ghana. And he was like, you're right. This is the kind of thing we have to always talk about. We have to talk about soft bigotry in our own community because it impacts how many people show up to vote for Kamala Harris. It impacts how many people vote to show up for any woman or any person who is not cisgender male in our own communities. So I think that's an important part of the conversation we have to have as well, because when you were talking to him about that particular trans ad, and he said it wasn't an issue for him per se. He said, I raised it. But the fact that it was an issue for any voter in our community specifically is a problem that we really need to address. We have to get rid of the bigotry in our own community so that we can have more focus on what's actually impacting us, in a broad way, and be able to your point, go after those disaffected voters who are not showing up to vote. We have to do that.
Well, let's talk about somebody who voted for Trump, who didn't write their name in. Mm-hmm. They were recently featured on CNN. This is a little bit different. This is somebody who you probably couldn't. Well, I don't know. Maybe you can now. Listen to this voter who is heartbroken. She's all shook up. She's all shook up. She said, "I done been shook down because of what Donald Trump has done to her." Listen to this.
If you could say anything to President Trump now, what would you say?
I expected better from you. I really did. I expected that you would do what was right and cut waste and fraud and all of those things that you promised us before we elected you in office, but you're not doing that. You're creating a disaster, and I don't know what America's going to look like if this continues.
Did you ever think that your job would be impacted in a Trump administration?
No, absolutely not.
Jennifer Piggott was abruptly fired from her job at the Treasury Department's Bureau of Fiscal Service here in Parkersburg, West Virginia, along with 124 other probationary employees. She'd voted for Donald Trump and thought her government job would be safe.
But to cut the knees out of the working class Americans just doesn't make sense to me. You know, it's what's the checking account look like, babe? We went through our list of items on our budget and said, what can we get rid of? And we've gotten rid of all of those things, including cable. I had my last review on the 31st of January, and I had the highest rating that you can get on a review, less than 21 days before I was terminated for my performance.
On top of losing her job, Jennifer is facing backlash from both Democrats and Republicans for speaking out. She's received death threats and more.
Our home's been egged. You know, they've hacked my Instagram and posted horrible things about my deceased mother.
So, and nobody should be getting death threats. That's ridiculous. But this is what I'm talking about. And we're seeing this time and time again. You don't care until it's turned on you. That is shameful. Now, the question they should have asked her is, did you think anybody else would get fired? Did you think anybody else would have lost their job?
Well, I think she answered.
Not me.
No, she said, I wanted him to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. The thing is, she didn't think
well, then there you go.
She didn't think it was her. She doesn't care
She didn't think it was her.
Other people. And she would vote the same way again if she thought that it wouldn't be her losing her job, but Black people, brown people, whoever else losing theirs. She didn't care, and she still doesn't care. She only cares about the fact that she's affected. She doesn't care about the other people being affected. There was a poll I looked at, an analysis recently that said there were some Trump voters who were upset about what he was doing, but they said they would still vote for it.
And there's that.
Yep.
And that's where we are.
Yeah.
And I've said it time and time again. You didn't realize you were they, them. Reese Colbert has said it. You didn't realize you were they, them. And now look at you. This is where we are. And we keep seeing these stories.
I want to know what you think about those who, because she's not said, I'm going to vote for a Democrat next time. She basically just said, Trump's not doing what I thought. It's shameful. He's cutting the knees out of the middle class, which basically means white folks. But the fact that she's gotten death threats, her house egged, which the suggestion is that that's from MAGA folks. What do you think is happening there? Because she's not like, I'm, not MAGA anymore, but like what is that?
Let me tell you something. When I interviewed the survivors of the Jonestown Massacre, one of the things, and that happened in 1978, and Jim Jones, a disgusting cult leader, led countless people to Guyana, Jonestown, Guyana, and it ended up in a murder-suicide. But the survivors of it told me they believe it was more of a murder, and they believe that there were people trying to escape, and they were being killed.
Mm-hmm.
That all those people did not kill themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I think in a cult, when you see people go outside of the cult, those people sometimes act out. Mm-hmm. I do believe MAGA is cultish to me. Mm-hmm. And so I think when they see her voicing her regrets, then they're turning on her. And this is why I always said, what's happening in our country and where we are right now, it's just, I knew that we were all going to be impacted. It wouldn't just be Black folks. It wouldn't just be trans folks. All of us would be impacted. Yeah. And that's why I was trying to ask that brother yesterday, what could I have done to get to you? I mean, you had Taraji P. Henson mentioning Project 2025.
Everybody was talking about it.
Everybody, and that's fascinating. That it felt like everybody was talking about it, but a federal worker who works for the government, who's a veteran, didn't think it would happen to them. This person right here thought it would happen to everybody else except for them. Why does everybody think that the bullet's going to stop with somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
That's not how this works. That's not how it works in history. That's not how it works in world history. Damn sure ain't American history. So that's where we are, and it's shameful. And with someone like that, it's very difficult to have any kind of sympathy. I don't think, not for the death threats, that's ridiculous. But it's like, well, you got what you voted for. Your vote has consequences. And why are you surprised? He said he would do it.
Yep.
Or did you think you had that protection?
Yep. You know,
You thought you had it.
I will say I don't feel any sympathy for her, zero zilch. What I do feel is I do feel sympathy for people like her who make those choices, whose children are impacted. Because their parents did something that didn't serve their best interest. I do feel badly for those situations. I have a friend I hadn't spoken to in a few weeks who called me 3 days ago to tell me that he's been out of it because 6 weeks ago he lost his job because of Doge. He was a contract worker at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. Good job, gainfully employed, went to work on a Wednesday and was told this is your last day. So he's been out of work now for 6 weeks. He's a person who voted for Kamala Harris, who did his due diligence. But this to the point you just made, and the fact the things we've been saying for weeks and months now. There are people who did do their due diligence, people who did show up to vote for the vice president. And we're going to all be impacted in some way. I don't care who you are. If you live in this country and you buy eggs and grocery, and you get mail, or you have Social Security checks come, whatever it is, you're going to be impacted in some way, unless you are like uber wealthy, which most of us are not. You are going to feel it in some way with some disruption. And I think it's just the chaos and the cruelty. I think that is the point. I think the cruelty is the point. I just read something earlier today where they're talking about defunding research for pregnant women who are victims of domestic violence. And things that people are just like, what? But they are doing these cuts in the most awful, unsophisticated, horrible way possible without any care of who they impact. Because again, the person leading Doge is Elon Musk, who is the richest man in the world. And he's being instructed by Donald Trump, somebody else who's white, privileged, and wealthy. So when you have wealthy,
but also, I agree with you on that. But ultimately, this is happening because on November 4th, a lot of people decided to support the guy who said he has concepts of a plan, who said, who Project 2025 said what they would do. So there's a whole level of this was not done in secrecy.
Yep.
I don't know why I'm surprised it ain't worse. And it's going to get worse. I mean, this is exactly what they said they would do. And now you're shocked. Now you're surprised. It is some bizarre poetic justice.
It is.
The person who wrote in their name loses their job. The person who voted for Trump is impacted. It's some bizarre justice. And I don't mean that in a good way. Trump said he would get retribution. Y'all are being targeted for that. And the only reason, whether it is the person who I interviewed yesterday or that clip that I just played, the only reason why you might be okay is because there are Democrats in office who are using the courts. You have attorneys, you have attorney generals who are fighting to make sure you're going to be okay. Now, if that don't encourage you to show up and vote and make the right decision, I don't know what to say. But that will be the only way we'll get through this. If there are people who will fight for you, and more than they're going to have that blue by their name. Not because Democrats are perfect, not because of that, but because this is where we are right now. And I hope Democrats learn a really good lesson. The ones who have power, and George Clooney and Rob Reiner and all that shit y'all pulled in July, a 3-4 week press tour on how horrible y'all look fractured. Like I said, it's so hard to recover from this. So what are you going to do moving forward? Are you going to keep these old guard Democrats in as power players? Or are you going to do something different?
I wonder if that guy you interviewed would have voted for would have written his name in if he lived in Pennsylvania or Michigan or.
That's a good question. I wish I would have asked him that. I don't know. Let's go to a couple calls here, then we'll head out. We'll go to a break. Let's go to Raquel from New Orleans. What's up, Raquel? Oh no, am I in the wrong studio? Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Let me see here. Damn it. Oh, okay. Let's go to Robert from St. Louis. What's up, Robert? First time caller.
Thank you for Oh man, I love to hear that, Brother Kane. I agree with a lot of the stuff that's going on in this conversation. The first thing I want to bring up is that yes, I think is disrespectful to have this notion that Harris had joined at the very end when Biden could have won, but at the same time, we all know that Donald Trump was going to be the candidate. Everybody that was campaigning, trying to be president, was just really just trying to out for VP. So that's kind of crazy. Secondly, the F around and find out is really happening right now, and I know it's sad for a lot of folks, but I think for the culture, for the collective of Black people, I think it's best if we just sit down where we need to sit down and, speak up when we need to speak up. But we got to let this play out a little bit more. There's not enough people that's suffering right now. They have to really figure out that it's just not us. It's just not us that's going through all this. All the decisions that everybody makes and that they want, again, there are victims that now they're playing victim, but when it was going to happen to somebody else, they voted that particular way. So I really feel like there's a niche that needs to be looked at of how will people protest without Black people. And I thank you so much.
Appreciate you, brother. We're going to head to a break. We're going to come back and bye, YouTube. See you over there. You got to get the SiriusXM app, y'all. You got to get it. Got to make sure you subscribe. Make sure